Well, the reality is that Donald Trump can technically take a little bit of credit for what's been happening over the past 72 to 96 hours in the Middle East. Sending Steve Witkoff. Steve Witkoff was actually very, influential as far as working side by side with Biden administration State Department officials and negotiators in Doha in trying to make this deal come through. It's a victory for Donald Trump because he, as you know, campaigned as saying that, look, when I was in office, there was no global conflict, which technically is incorrect.
Hmm.
But he now gets to come in and say, look, I helped fix this even before I was in office. And on day one, I'm meeting that campaign promise by saying that we're reducing the friction in the Middle East by coming up with a peace deal. It's still very, very early. We're only in the first full day of the new Trump administration. So there's a lot of decisions that have to be made.
Hmm.
Is he going to get his full national security team? A lot of questions. There's no question that the region is walking on eggshells right now to see what his next move is going to be.
Hmm. Dr. Osman, in what ways could Trump's open endorsement of Israeli policies impact the stability of the West Bank, especially after Israeli military operations in Jenin?
Thank you for having me, Hala.
Thank you.
It will have a disastrous impact on the situation on the West Bank in general and in the rest of the occupied Palestinian territories. I might concur with the other honorable guest speaker in his assessment that Trump can take credit for the Gaza ceasefire. However, he cannot take any credit for the overall improvement of the situation in the occupied territories because no improvement has occurred. What happened is we have temporarily at least paused a humanitarian catastrophe in the Gaza Strip, an ongoing genocide, and now it's on hold until the detainees are released, and Donald Trump will not even commit to maintaining the ceasefire beyond the deal, or even to the continuation of the two other phases of the deal, which should see the complete end of the relentless war of aggression on Gaza. As for the West Bank, Trump, one of the first executive degrees regarding foreign policy he signed was lifting sanctions on extremist, radical, criminal Zionist settlers who are basically undertaking land grabs inside the occupied West Bank.
Mm-hmm.
And by doing that, he is only emboldening Israeli impunity and pushing them further towards acquiring more land in an illegal manner and displacing the Palestinians. So by doing, and maybe there are even reports that Mr. Trump might even recognize Israel's expected unilateral annexation, illegal annexation, of course, of the West Bank settlements, for example. And if this happens, it will be disastrous, Hala.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I have my genuine concerns in this regard.
Mm-hmm. It's a valid concern, of course. Mr. Russell, in what ways could Trump's foreign policy decisions reshape the geopolitical landscape of the Middle East over the next few years?
Oh, there's a tremendous broad lane of options that could affect the Middle East policy regarding the U.S. and our regional partners even. Look, let's be clear about this. This shouldn't be a surprise to anybody in the global community that Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu have a very close relationship. They govern in a very similar way. Their approach to executive authority is very much in the same way.
And the United States is the #1 ally of Israel. It's a proven fact. So yes.
And then understand. But what I'm saying is that, again, the U.S. argument continues to be, and there is some validity to this argument, is, the situation in Gaza does not go as far as it does if there's no October 7th. So the reality is that we are backing an ally. The U.S. policy has not changed from Trump to Biden, back to Trump, that that support of Israel's right to defend itself, defend its people, and defend its sovereignty is non-negotiable. That is true. What is different now in the Trump relationship is, and this is part of what I believe, I don't know for a fact, but I believe that Wyckoff's argument was, look, either come to a ceasefire deal now, or you know how close Trump is to Netanyahu. Do you think that Trump is going to hold back Netanyahu from continuing his ongoing military engagement in Gaza? He's already done this much. He's created a
But
humanitarian
doesn't that
crisis.
contradict, Mr. Russell, with the fact that Trump wants to present himself and improve his image as the man of peace?
There is anytime you describe any policy, particularly in foreign policy with Donald Trump, there's going to be conflict. There's going to be almost a hypocrisy in a little bit. The reality is, Donald Trump will promote himself as a man of peace. I think that Wyckoff has committed that message. And look, he's been engaging with regional leaders even before he was in office. He had Mohammed bin Salman from Saudi Arabia there. He had the emir from Qatar there. He's been engaging with regional leaders on a regular basis even before he took office. He is spreading the message of, look, I want peace, but make no mistake about it is, I'm still the president of the United States. I'm going to make decisions that are in the best interest of not just the U.S., but quite frankly,
With
what's
Israel,
in his
too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dr. Osman, what implications does Trump's lack of confidence in the Gaza ceasefire have for future U.S. involvement in Middle Eastern conflicts?
You see, Hannah, that's the problem with our selective approach to statements made by President Trump. The thing is, we always speak about his achievement. I have spoken of his unique achievement in finalizing the ceasefire agreement, something the Biden administration wasn't able to do for the better part of 15 months. However, that will not make me turn a blind eye on a rash, irresponsible statement that he made yesterday on the Gaza ceasefire, saying that this is not our war, this is their war. Well, actually, you are bankrolling this war as the United States of America with tens of billions of dollars. So if this is not your war, then you shouldn't be committed to this extent. And of course, I'm not speaking in some virtual world of misconceptions and alternative realities. I know that the United States is a staunch ally of Israel and will remain to be so. So let's not pretend that Trump will be that different from Biden in dealing with the overall conflict in Gaza. Yesterday's statement can be seen as permissive for Israel, that if you seek to resume this war, this is your prerogative, this is your decision, and you can go ahead and do that, and we will remain committed to you, it seems. I think what Trump cares about is securing the release of the Israeli detainees, especially the ones holding American citizenships. However, he is not committed to a long-term commitment to preserving and guaranteeing a ceasefire in the Gaza Strip. And even Netanyahu is speaking openly. His media outlets, his pundits, even his own government officials who are speaking to the media anonymously and even in person overtly, saying that this is a temporary arrangement, this is a temporary ceasefire, and we will resume hostilities. So this basically negates any achievement in terms of conflict resolution, in terms of Trump. Trump is not a man of peace. I do not see Trump as someone who will actually sponsor a peace process in the Middle East. And anyone who thinks in this manner, in my opinion, with all due respect, is delusional and does not see things as they are. So I think it's a very dangerous statement. The idea of lack of confidence, the dismissive manner in which he spoke of the situation in Gaza, as if 50 or 60,000 people have not been butchered in cold blood over the past 15 months, as if an entire part of Palestine, the Gaza Strip, has been wiped off the map, according to the United Nations, an unprecedented humanitarian crisis in the 21st century, something that is reminiscent of the horrors of World War II. I think that this is the actual assessment of things, and I do not think that we have better days ahead of us as long as Trump commits to this course of action.
Mr. Russell, how could Trump's supportive stance towards Israel, which you have highlighted, including revoking sanctions on extremist settlers, affect the dynamics of Israeli-Palestinian relations?
Well, Donald Trump is concerned about, excuse me, is concerned about the protection of Israel, protection of our ally. Like, I'm not going to make any apologies for the U.S. stance that Israel continues to be our strongest ally in the region, and we will continue to support them in their right to exist. Let's also not forget, I mentioned this earlier, and this is a key point, that whenever we get into a discussion, particularly now when we talk about Trump and Trump trying to negotiate peace in the region, we cannot forget the fact that a large part of this is due to the fact that the Hamas military arm conducted an illegal, terrorist, unprovoked act against innocent civilians back on October 7th. This is non-refutable.
Legal.
The reality is the reality is that this set into motion several tragic incidences. October 7th happens, then we start seeing the military operations being conducted by the IDF in Gaza. This leads to a humanitarian crisis that is building, and the loss and the unnecessary loss of civilian lives in Gaza.
More than 50,000 lives.
Understand,
including women and children.
I understand that, but let me just make one last statement real quick here. Is that one of the things I am concerned about is Donald Trump is so interested in looking like a superpower president right now. The fact is that he says, look, you either abide by this deal or I release all the restraints on Benjamin Netanyahu and the IDF. They can do whatever they have to do to protect their right to exist. And that's the challenge.
Dr. Osman, you have just heard what Mr. Russell said. So in what ways could Trump's America First agenda align or contradict with the need for international cooperation in resolving the Middle East conflicts?
Well, Hadla, I have to comment on what
yes, please.
Mr. Russell just said, because no, this did not start on October 7th. October 7th, this tragedy, if we will term the intentional killing of civilians as tragedies, then if the butchering of tens of thousands of Palestinian civilians is a tragedy, just like the California wildfires, then the butchering of the Israeli civilians on the 7th of October is a terrible tragedy as well, because we have to unify our method of assessment if we are to move forward with this conversation in a logical, in the realm of logic and objectivity. And in this regard, this did not start on October 7th. This started with 7 decades of illegal
70 years ago, exactly.
Yes, of Palestine. And what
of occupation. Let's make the word clear. Of occupation. Of occupying a country.
Regime. Exactly, Hannah. Of an apartheid regime sponsored by the United States and the collective West, unfortunately. So this is a fact. And they are the ones who vehemently refuse to reach a peaceful settlement based on the two-state solution that will give the Palestinians 22% of their historical land in return to recognizing Israel's right to exist as a nation-state. No one is denying that. We are committed to peace in the region. A country like Egypt is. The peoples of the regions are. The United States actually isn't, unfortunately. And it seems as well that the intelligentsia in the United States are very comfortable being apologetic about this kind of genocidal behavior by the Israelis over the past several decades. And as for the America First agenda, it will only have a more detrimental effect, because it will mean less U.S. commitment, less U.S. restraints on Israeli behavior, and more unconditional support for Israel's behavior. Even if the war in Gaza ends, and I hope it ends, and there's a probability that it might actually end, however, we still have an agonizing humanitarian situation that will remain unaddressed unless the U.S. pushes for more the furthering of the reconstruction efforts of Gaza, and also if the situation in the West Bank is not addressed. today
Exactly.
Israel launched a military operation in Jenin. So
Yes.
it seems that
Yes.
we are poised towards an escalation in the West Bank, Hala.
Yes.
So unfortunately, this policy is irresponsible, and my cautious optimism that I have maintained over the past few days has withered with the wind when I saw Mr. Trump's statements yesterday, and when I saw what Netanyahu is doing today, and has been replaced by profound pessimism, Hala.
Mr. Russell, what potential strategies might Trump adopt to counter Iran in the region? Let's talk about Iran and Trump's strategies toward Iran in the coming period.
Well, Iran's a whole different animal when it comes to U.S. foreign policy in the region. There is no question that the government in Tehran, the Ayatollah-led government in Iran, is an adversary, is an enemy of the United States. They have declared the United States as an enemy of theirs, and have set proxies and have set their non-uniform combatants in the region to go attack the interests. They've done everything from terrorist attacks on innocent American civilians to attacking the borders of our allies in the region. Notably that of the Jordanians back in a year ago. The reality is that as we look at Iran is going to have to realize that while President Biden's administration was more focused on settling disagreements and diffusing tension in the region through diplomatic efforts. We saw that with as many times as Secretary of State Tony Blinken going to the region and meeting with leaders. This is a different tack. Donald Trump is going to have a heavy hand. If you come at the U.S., if you attack U.S. interests, U.S. allies, it will be the policy of the United States to strike back. That is going to be that the ball, in my opinion, kind of falls into the court of the leadership in Tehran. Do they want to test this? Do they want to move forward and try and provoke some sort of retaliation from the U.S.? I don't think it's a good idea. I think the close relationship that we have with our strong allies and our strong partners throughout the Middle East process in the Gaza situation, such as our friends in Egypt, our friends in Qatar, they have without a doubt been conveyed the message that, look, we will strive for peace, but do not provoke this. This is not going to be a diplomatic situation. America is going to show its strength, but it will work towards peace. That is going to be the key focus going forward. And that's the message that is probably going to have to get to Tehran, and they're going to have to adopt that side very quickly.